So the majority of my pre-birth memory is of a time somewhat immediately preceding this life. And not just this life, but the one just before this, where I had taken a long break in between lives. I was in this realm of golden light, and it was so beautiful and joyful and free and peaceful and rejuvenating. And I remember every once in a while, this guide coming to me here and there, once in a while, just asking, "Are you ready to go back yet? Are you ready to go back yet?" I remember the veil coming over me once again, and the plummet in my vibration, down, 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 lower, 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 lower. Oh my gosh, just so low, and then plummeting more, and then lower, 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 and eventually arriving at this place where all my knowing had been cut off. All my connectedness disappeared. Eventually, I was like, I'm not doing this. This is not happening. This is so dark. This is so low vibration. I've lost all that I am. I am not doing this. And once again, I began to summon my might to fight my way out like I had the previous time. And when I did that, the most holy moment in my entire life happened. I was expanded back out, and I felt all the universe within me. And I felt all connectedness, and I felt our sun, the sun of earth, churning with bliss. And it was in me. It was like of me, of my body. It was of all of us. And I felt the great I am presence of God, what we call God, just a word, but the great source of all things, the great I am. It said to me,
This is Beyond with Heather Tesch, where we examine near-death experiences and life itself, hopefully making this life a little better. Hello, welcome everybody, and hello to my guest, Christian Sundberg. Hello, Christian.
Hello, Heather. How are you?
I am fantastic. I'm so excited to talk to you today. It's because your story is so in-depth, and you really open a window into the spiritual realm, the heavenly realm. And so I'm excited to hear about that. And your story is interesting too, because yours is a pre-birth memory of this. So why don't you just jump in, share your story, and give us lots of detail?
Sure. Well, thank you very much for having me on. It was
You're
nice to
welcome.
meet you in Phoenix at the
Yes,
IONS conference.
it was wonderful.
So I'm going to try to share, but I have to disclaim every time I try that words just don't do it justice. That might sound redundant because I say this every time, but I think it's really important because language is specific to our world of form, and our true nature so fully transcends this entire world of form. Like the higher realms or the nature of our soul, it's just so much vaster and bigger and not limited. And words are based in the limitations of our world, like linear time, a discrete location, and these things that we just assume are so real. Like we transcend that. So trying to put words on it is really difficult, but I'll give it a shot. And so I know how this sounds. I'm kind of a normal working professional type person. And after I began to have out-of-body experiences at the age of 30, my body is 44 years old right now. And after the pre-birth memory began to return to me at the age of 30, I didn't share this for like 8 years because you don't talk about this kind of thing. It's just,
Right.
it's just not kind of the thing you talk about. But eventually I really felt deeply like, wow, the ground is fertile enough really to share this now. The collective consciousness is kind of reaching this place where it's just kind of ready, so that's why I'm sharing. So I'll dive right in. But again, I know this sounds strange. So I remember existing before I had ever physically incarnated. And I was with a group of beings going over this realm of light. We were moving through a realm of light, doing energetic work together. And there was a being in the group with us who was absolutely breathtaking in his quality of essence. Okay, so because in the higher realms, we connect telepathically, automatically with everybody around us because we know our connection. Our true nature is connected. We're not just individuated. We're also part of part of each other. We can feel each other. So I could feel from him this incredible sense of freedom and power and joy. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I asked him, like, what did you do to become this? And do you feel as deeply in this way as I feel that you feel? And he shared, yes. And I felt into his being, and it was just amazing and inspiring. And I asked, like, what did you do to be this? And he shared with me many things, but chief among them was that he had lived a physical incarnation. And in his physical lifetime, he had a long-term health condition in his body. And he had pain for years because of this health condition. And the way that he chose to meet and integrate that experience, like the way he chose to utilize it, to interface with it, to who he chose to be in it, you could say, allowed this really a profound refinement of the quality of his essence. That's the only way I can think to describe it. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to do that. I want to do that. I was just so inspired. And he said something like, and again, this is telepathic, it's not words, but it was like, yeah, and it wasn't negative, but it was like, yeah, that's what they all say. Like, you just don't know how hard this is. Like, you just don't understand like what you're asking for. Because I was just ignorant at the time, and so now, of course, as the human, I understand. But at the time I did not. But I was persistent and I said, well, I really want to do this. And he said, well, go talk to your guides. So I did. And I don't remember right after that, but I know that I lived many times, and I went and I found this being later, and I shared with him, I'm on this path, like I'm doing this. And he was encouraging. So the majority of my pre-birth memory is of a time somewhat immediately preceding this life. And not just this life, but the one just before this, where I had taken a long break in between lives. I was in this realm of golden light, and it was so beautiful and joyful and free and peaceful and rejuvenating. And I remember every once in a while this guide coming to me here and there, once in a while, just asking, are you ready to go back yet? Are you ready to go back yet? Not pestering me, but just kind of like reminding me of my own intention, and eventually saying, okay, I'm ready to go back now. And then reviewing with this guide what I can only describe as my state, like who I am, who I've been, what I understood at the being level, not just intellectual understanding, but like what I had known, what types of experience I had known, and what you could even say like qualities or virtues maybe. I reviewed them with him, and it was really obvious. I don't like the words here, but like the thing I needed to work on. It wasn't really needed to work on. It's not like a task, but I could see this one area that was so obvious. It was so easy to identify. It was almost like a joke, like how easy it was to see. And it was a very specific low vibration fear that had bested me in a previous experience. And what I mean is, in a previous lifetime, this fear had kind of taken over. And so I had become very egoic and damaging to others. And I could see that fear was like really deep and profound. And I was like, wow, can that even be done? Like, can I even, because it was like, I knew I should integrate that, heal that, like come to terms with that. And again, the verbs aren't good because it's not like I have to do that or need to do that, but it would just be so powerful if I could, And I asked, could it even be done? And he shared with me, yes. And you have all of time available to you to do so. And I just knew, like, well, if it can be done, then I will do it. Like, I'll do it. So they brought me a life that was appropriate for that intention. And again, it wasn't this life. It was the one immediately preceding this one. And I remember reviewing that life in incredible detail. And then I remember saying yes for that life. And then I remember accepting the veil. Okay, so the veil is just a word we use for the constraints that we adopt in order to have the physical perspective. So it's basically like a cloak of limitation that your consciousness takes on. And the simple way to put that is, it's a forgetting. We forget all the rest of what we really are, and we come to feel very, very separate from each other here. And so the way I experienced that veiling process was like a plummet in the vibration of my being, like diving down and just falling in vibration, like low, low, lower, 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 more, lower, more, lower, more. And when I thought I got to the bottom, it just kept going, and it was lower, more, lower, 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 like just crazy drop in vibration down to the state of being super dense and super like empty at the same time, like being in the vacuum of space or something, just metaphorically. Like there was no heat, no air there, energetically is what it felt like, but also super dense. Like I had just been shoved inside of a tuna can. And so that I was in the fetus then. I was the body at that moment. I was experiencing the body. But after only a few moments, I'm like, I'm not doing this. There's no way. Like, this is so low vibration. This is so dark. I am not going to do this. I'm not going to tolerate this for a lifetime. So I summoned my might because I knew that I was a powerful spiritual being, and I smote the veil. I fought my way back out past it. And I was successful at doing that because I immediately had a life review, and I saw that I had killed the fetus that was to be my body. I had caused a miscarriage for the mother because of my rejection, because of my fighting and pushing my way back out. And I could see how my fear then caused incredible grief for the mother, and how not only would her journey be made more difficult, but because I had heaped grief upon her, hundreds and hundreds of other people being affected by the mother would also be affected. And I was responsible for all of that, just because of even though I had never even been born, I was still responsible because I still wielded that intention. I still reacted in fear and rejected the life. And from that point of view, it's okay. Like, there's nothing actually truly wrong. Like, you can't fail. It's okay. But I could also see very objectively, like, oh man, I got a lot of fear. Like, I should do something about this. So in between that experience and this incarnation, I actually remember, I know this sounds really strange, but practicing surrendering my control to a mock veil in a place I call the Veil Acceptance Simulator. It's just I don't know, I just made up a word there, but it was like a place where it's like a dark pool where they dunk you under the water and you feel the vibration plummet, and you just basically practice surrendering your control to it and not fighting it. But I can tell you the real veil is more difficult than the simulator. It's like not the same. So eventually they brought me this life, and I remember reviewing this life in incredible detail. Millions and millions and millions of possibilities of what this life might be like. I reviewed it all at once, like in a second. And when I say I reviewed it, it was like it was like a probability tree. Like if you took a tree and laid it on its side and started at the thick part of the trunk and worked your way out to the branches. It was like that, with birth being at the front end, or pre-birth, actually incarnation being at the start. And all these millions of possibilities of what might unfold. And the system is pretty good, very good at predicting the potential outcomes, the potentiality. And I reviewed it all, very thoroughly. I reviewed it, what it would be like to be me. It wasn't just about events or choices. It was like, what would the experience be like to be Christian, to be the human? And, what decides, and the branches is free will choice making, my choice making, and the choices of everyone else in the game. There's a lot of choice making going on here. And I remember making certain requests, asking certain things about the life. Like, I asked if I could be intelligent again, because I knew that in previous lifetimes I had been intelligent and it was a trait that I preferred. And I knew that it was important that I be male in this life. Not that males or females are better in any way, not at all. It's just different energies. And somehow the male energy had a certain obtuse edge to it or something that would make it more, it would help me to process the fear in a certain way. And I knew that my father would instill confidence in me as a child, and that would give me like a rock to stand on, so that I wouldn't have to worry about the confidence thing. I would have that, so that I would be able to face the fear when it arose. I knew it was likely that I would have health challenges, and that there would be a significant health challenge in my early 20s, and that would give me the opportunity to re-experience that fear. And that did happen. I've had many chronic health issues throughout my life. At the time, I didn't understand them, but in the pre-life review, I know now that I saw it as, oh my gosh, an incredible opportunity. Like, I know that sounds maybe like masochism or something, but it's not. It's not masochism. It's that I knew what we are. I knew we cannot fail, and I could see the absolutely incredible gift. Oh my gosh, the incredible gift of being human. It was like winning the lottery. That's what it felt like. It felt like someone was handing me $1 million ticket. It felt like all it is saw in me that there would be, I don't like this word, but like profitability or something, usefulness, love benefit or something, if I could do this. And that was such an honor. It was like, oh my gosh. So yeah, it was an incredible amount of excitement, even though I knew it was likely that I would be crushed with physical trauma. So I remember there having to be a moment to say yes, and I don't remember that moment, but I do remember being in this waiting area then, and eventually my guide coming to me and getting my attention, like, go now, like right now. Like, you're on Earth time now, buddy. You got to go. Like, not waiting around for 2 seconds, right now. And I was like, okay, right now. And then I remember being in this room. I don't know how to describe this. It was like a station in outer space, or a mechanic's shop. And below me, there was like a shaft in the floor. And below me, that was the Earth. I could see the Earth. And I was in the middle, hovering over the shaft. And there were these beings in front of me that I can only describe as technicians. And they are very mechanical in nature, and they are very skilled at veil application. So what I mean is, like, the soul is so unique and so powerful and so rich. It's like an ocean of different colors, you could say. And each lifetime is so unique. Each biology, each body is unique. It has its own energy. Each family has its own energy. Each country, each species, each planet, each universe. I mean, this is a huge system. And so they do this thing where they like make the veil fit for the body and for the being and for all the context, and they like make it jive. And I remember them asking me one last time, like, are you sure? Are you ready to do this? And I said, yes. And I knew that once I said yes here, I was in for the ride. It's like getting on a roller coaster and not being able to get off, you know? And I remember saying yes. And then I remember the veil coming over me once again, and the plummet in my vibration, down, 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 lower, 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 lower. Oh my gosh, just so low, and then plummeting more, and then lower, 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 and eventually arriving at this place where all my knowing had been cut off. All my connectedness disappeared, and I felt alone and dark and dense, and like once again, like I had been shoved inside of a tiny little can. And I remember sending one message back to the technicians. Did it take? Did the veil take? And they sent one message back, yes. And then I actually felt accomplished, because even just making it to the physical is a huge accomplishment, because it's such a vibrational distance. It's huge. So then I was there for a while. I don't know how long. And then eventually I was like, I'm not doing this. This is not happening. This is so dark. This is so low vibration. I've lost all that I am. I am not doing this. And once again, I began to summon my might to fight my way out like I had the previous time. And when I did that, the most holy moment in my entire life happened. I was expanded back out, and I felt all the universe within me. And I felt all connectedness, and I felt our sun, the sun of Earth, churning with bliss. And it was in me. It was like of me, of my body. It was of all of us. And I felt the great I am presence of God, what we call God, just a word, but the great source of all things, the great I am. It said to me, this is still what you are. You can never not be this. And I was like, oh, okay, then I don't have to fight, you see. Because it was like I was fighting because I felt like I had lost everything that I was. I was like reacting in fear at a perception that wasn't even true. The perception was, I've lost everything that I am. I have no power. I'm not doing this. But that wasn't true. So that was so calming, so I stopped fighting, and I returned back into being in the womb. And then I remember being there a long time. And then eventually I remember being born, the day I was born. I remember the sensory experience, the sight, the sound, the touching. I remember circumcision. I remember looking at the nurses and feeling so much love for them, and like just having love for everyone. And I remember being so curious, like just looking up at the world and being like, what is this place? I had no idea what was happening. I had no understanding at all. I just knew something was happening, and it was really interesting and really intense. Yeah. So I don't remember much right after that. I will say, I think it was about 10 or 11 days old. My body almost died. I aspirated. I turned blue. My parents rushed me to the hospital, and they baptized me in the hospital. So I kind of always wondered if maybe that experience had something to do with all of this. I don't know. But as I got older, maybe 3 or 4 or something, I used to draw upon the pre-birth memory. I had some of that memory still. And I used to kind of cheat a little bit and check the flow chart and just see what was going to happen, what was likely to happen, just simple things like is someone going to come over tomorrow, or are we going to go to the store? Just like simple things. But that ability, vanished pretty quickly. Right, probably by the age of about 5 or 6, I had none of that memory left. And all of this was I had no memory of this at all between the age of 5 or 6 and 30. And then when it returned after I had taken up a long-term meditation practice, after several months, I began to have out-of-body experiences. And at about the same time, this just opened up. It was just there. And it was so normal. It wasn't like a big, like, gates opening epiphany or something. It was just so familiar, so normal. It was actually the more normal layer of me. I don't know how to describe this. And, the human layer was the play. I could see that. I could see this is not actually what we are. This is just like a deep, deep play that we're entertaining. Um, anyway, yeah. So that's a quick summary.
Wow. Such an incredible experience that you had. And there is so much detail, even with a quick summary. What is it like to be in the presence of God? Can you describe that just a bit more?
I wish there were words. Well, first of all, oh my gosh, I feel like any words just are blasphemy because it's so holy. It's so holy is not even a good. I mean, it's so personal. Maybe is a good word. So it's like the most familiar thing, and it's also like complete and total love, complete and total freedom, complete and total. Like if you imagine the most powerful love on earth, and you magnify it to 1 billion, that would be like a millionth of it. I don't know how to put language on this. It's absolutely beyond language with the depth of love and freedom and joy that is. And there's so much wisdom in that. And there's so much unconditional love. Like, sometimes people ask, is God impersonal or personal? Well, it's really both. There's the impersonal sense that, this is like the substance of being that we all are. But there's also an extremely personal knowing, extremely personal, like knowing you better than you even know yourself kind of thing. And the love is genuine. It's not like, oh, you're small, but I love you. No, it's like, I adore you. I love you. I celebrate you. Uh, I don't know how to describe this. It's like we are celebrated for exactly who we are.
Do you have any recollection of God before you came to earth in this life?
So the thing is, separation isn't even a real thing. So in higher systems, we know our connectedness with that at the same time as being individuated and our precious individual selves. And so in higher systems, that connectedness is very plain and clearly known. So it's always there to some degree, to more or less conscious degree, I guess you could say. It's always there. It's like the light that is shining within all things. So then it's like asking, well, did you ever see the light before? Well, it is the reality. it's like the thing. So of course, it's just that there's just no language. It shines in so many different forms of expression. It can arrive in the way that I just described in a very personal, direct communication, or it can shine as the light that shines through all elements of an environment in a higher realm, for instance, because in some higher realms, the colors are so beautiful and so alive. Like I remember having one out of body experience where I was like staring at the grass, and one blade of grass was so beautiful that I felt like I actually could stand here all day and just look at that blade of grass, and I would be absolutely overflowing with joy. That's how much love was pouring out of that blade of grass, and there's a whole universe of it. Like, so how do you describe that?
I've heard so many people talk about the grass and describing just what you did. How one blade is amazing.
I heard somebody at the NDE conference mention that. Vinny, I think his name is. I was like, oh, I so relate. He actually mentioned the grass. I was like, yes, I've experienced that same exact thing. It's funny that the grass of one thing, of anything, would be like so alluring, but it's really anything. Like I remember in one experience looking at the sky and seeing so many different colors in the sky. and there was this red, and the red was so alive and so just absolutely like the most breathtaking, punchy, vibrant red you've ever seen. And I was like, that red alone is like more beautiful than anything all on all the earth. Like how can I just, and I remember the time I started trying to analyze it. And as soon as I used my earth analytical mind, it returned to being in the body, because I started relying on earth form. But anyway, I'm just saying that, oh my gosh, it's so real. And it's even more real than this. And I know that was all a response to kind of your God question, but it's hard to speak to it because that light is of God. It's like we are all a part of God. It's like saying describe the ocean while we are drops of water. So it's really hard to speak to. There are just so many ways that can express. Yeah.
I have so many more questions for you, including some of the other things that you saw, and you were describing this place that you were at that was so amazing and golden.
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you all about that, but let's go ahead and take that into part 2.
Okay.
Christian, absolutely incredible, the things that he is sharing. I always say this, but I feel like every time I interview somebody, I'm like, oh my gosh, that was my favorite so far. And then I interview somebody else and I'm like, that's my favorite so far. I love talking to him. And there's so much more that we cover in depth in part 2. Here's just a quick look.
When I went through my awakening, I had to go through a very humbling, brave moment where I realized, oh, my belief system is not big enough. It's not full. And I had to actually admit, like, wow, I think I've been incorrect about a lot of this fundamental belief stuff that I was holding on to. That takes a lot of courage to do that. We're connected to many different reality systems at the soul level. There are some that are Earth-like, that are absolutely beautiful environments, but there's so many that are not, where you can just move at a whim. You can go somewhere with an intention. You can create with a thought. You can connect with people or other beings just because you want to. You also belong to groups, collective consciousnesses you could call, that are kind of working on things together. When the physical falls away, you don't get to keep your money. You don't keep the failing eyesight. You don't keep the stuff. It was all a simulation. But you are still you. You keep you.
So that's just a little bit of what's coming up in part 2. In the meantime, what did you think about this one? I mean, just the things that he shared about what he saw, what he experienced, so much detail to it. And I'd love to know what your thoughts are, because this is kind of different for some of us. So is there anything new that you learned or anything that stood out to you? Go ahead and put those in the comments. You can also just say you made it. That is always so wonderful. Or if you just want to say anything else that you liked watching Christian, that you loved his story, anything like that, that's all great. Thank you also for your likes. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you so much too if you share this with friends. That all means a lot to me. I'm just so grateful that you're here, and for many of you here week after week. Thank you so much, everybody. You have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you in part 2. Thanks for joining me on Beyond with Heather Tesch. Please add comments and questions you'd like future guests to answer. Also, if you liked what you heard, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. That'll help keep this podcast going. You can also go to Beyond with Heather Tesch to look for more episodes.